Go ahead and start. I'll be right here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Wednesday Night Live at Christ Church. Glad you are with us tonight. I'm your host for our edition tonight, and I'm glad to introduce in a few minutes our president of consistory, Steve Stauffer. He will be our guest host this evening. Today is August 12th, 2020, and I am delighted to share with you some thoughts that I've had and some places where I've been on the journey. First of all, I start with tonight's coffee mug thought. Here's my thought. God moves us for holy purposes, often beyond what we can see. Choose to be moved. Think about that for a moment or two. Can you picture that on a coffee mug? I do like my coffee mug. This was given to me by, I believe, Carolyn LeBoy. And it says, Pastor, fueled by coffee and chaos. I think I've shared that with you before, but I'm glad to get you smiling a little bit tonight. For my devotional Sharing the Journey article that I want to share with you tonight, I entitled this little article, devotional, No Opportunity Missed. And I'm reflecting on what I found to be a rather complicated Bible passage that's actually one of the passages selected for this Sunday's worship service. We're not going to be actually hearing it this Sunday, so I thought I would reflect on at least one part of that chapter and verse tonight. It's from Romans 11, verse 32. Listen carefully to this one. Paul writes, For God has imprisoned all in disobedience, so that God may be merciful to all. For God has imprisoned all in disobedience, so that God may be merciful to all. I've been thinking about that, and I came up with some ideas. And, you know, we've all heard the saying, God moves in mysterious ways, right? Well, this quote from Paul's letter to the Romans is one where we might go, huh? At least I did. Because it seems not only mysterious, but, well, just plain weird. I mean, it's like saying that a parent would set up a situation for their child to struggle and possibly fail just so that parent could turn around and say, oh, come here, my child. It's all right. Let me hold you and love you, and I forgive you. Well, we might call that suspect in parenting. I think Paul uses that basic idea, though, to illustrate a point. Here's how Paul describes what he calls, or what I'm calling, a circular process about what God is doing. And the process starts like this. God first calls the people of Israel to be God's people. And that call is irrevocable. That call is solid. That call is constant. And with that call of being God's people comes God's wonderful gifts of grace and mercy and a whole lot more too. But God did not stop the Israelites from becoming confounded by their idols and their lies and their sin, or to use Paul's words, imprisoned by disobedience. Because the people turned their backs on God, God used that opportunity to open the door for the Gentiles, which are the non-Jews and us, mainly to hear that same call through Christ. And upon receiving that call, it's also complete with God's grace and mercy and gifts. But as you know, just as easily, we can be confounded by our sin, easily imprisoned by our own disobedience, often turning our lives away from God. But God in Christ shows great mercy and great grace. And now that God's mercy is lavished upon us in spite of our sinfulness, this is the opportunity for the people of Israel, Paul says, to have another opportunity to be the recipients of God's grace and mercy. And round it goes. Crazy circular, right? Sounds kind of mysterious and kind of complicated, doesn't it? But the bottom line, I think, is this that Paul's after. that God goes to great extremes to keep the covenant that God made to welcome all people and to give people the great gifts of God's grace and mercy, no matter who you are. One of our modern day theologians, the late Eugene Peterson, he wrote a Bible translation, and his translation of this verse of Romans 11, verse 32 is this: in one way or another, God makes sure that we all experience what it means to be outside so that God can personally open the door and welcome us back inside. Mysterious? Yeah, probably. Life-giving, though, definitely. Because God doesn't miss any opportunity to show us just how deeply loved we are. Well, let's pray for a moment, shall we? Your ways are not our ways, O God, but somehow, even in our sinfulness, you still love us and welcome us back to fill us with your grace and your love. And we say thanks. Amen. Well, I'm delighted to introduce to you once again our guest host tonight, Mr. Steve Stauffer. He's the president of our consistory. He is also very actively engaged in our direction that we're moving with COVID environment. So I turn it over to Steve. Here he comes. I have the announcements on the sheets right there.
Oh, good.
Hello, everybody. I literally just walked in. I was busy. And I will start off this evening talking about announcements. I wanted to talk about our church, where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. And then I have a special thought I'd like to share with you. So we'll start with announcements. Let me think here. Ushers are needed for the summer and fall months for our outdoor worship services. Clearly, we're struggling a little bit and trying to get reset. If you are watching this YouTube video now or a little later in the evening or tomorrow, if you can usher, please just give Tracy a call at the office. Any Sunday in August, September would be wonderful. We just need 5 ushers each Sunday. So if you could do that, that would be helpful. Another reminder about Faith Formation on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock. That's a great group of the Contemporary Christian Conversation. Our youth ministry at Christ Church, a summer youth event for our middle and high school groups, s'mores and more. Come to Christ Church on Sunday, the 23rd, 7 to 8:30 p.m. You can crash it with me to get some s'mores. Come having the youth. Please come having already eaten your dinner on Sunday, the 23rd. They're going to play games that lend themselves. There will be social distancing. S'mores around the campfire at the pavilion, pretty cool. And come also to sing songs and games around that campfire. Is that it there, Galen?
That's it for the youth, but there's another page.
Okay, got another page there, folks. Sorry. Here are Christ Church next 10 days meetings and events. Thursday, tomorrow night, property, spiritual, and consistory. On Sunday, 9:30, outdoor worship by the pavilion. Monday at 6:30, the worship teams with the social justice group on a Zoom meeting. Tuesday, the 8 o'clock, I just spoke about the Contemporary Christian Conversation class on Zoom. Wednesday is Wednesday Night Live. Let me make a pitch right here, right now. If any of you are interested in hosting a Wednesday Night Live, please give Pastor Galen a call. He would appreciate that. I was going to say it's not that hard, but it's also not that easy. But you just do your best. And I think the more people who do it and different personalities, that's a good thing to represent our church and have different people doing it. Sunday at 9:30 of each week is worship outdoors at the pavilion. Joys and concerns. We've started to just list first names. If you want information, like if you don't know somebody's second name and you're concerned, just call the church office or Galen or even myself, and we'll be glad to give you more information. We just don't want to put this out to everywhere, and that's why we're doing first names. Mike values our prayers as he deals with instability concerns. Diane is preparing for surgery for cancer on September 8th. Rich continues his recovery from an infection in his foot. Jamie, who continues hospice care at home. We're thinking of him. Lynn having a test at Lancaster General regarding the pre-diagnosis of lymphoma. Sharon is awaiting the next steps after some lung nodules were discovered. And Sue is undergoing treatments for cancer and values our prayers. I wanted to just go through a few additional announcements. I already spoke about if you would be willing to host a Wednesday night live, just give Galen a call and that'll be wonderful. Other announcements. Beginning this week, we don't need to RSVP to the church regarding worshiping Sunday. You no longer need to do that. Just come, that like you would normally do. So that's one thing I think that we can return to. We think we can return to, excuse me, not just me. So no longer needed to RSVP. If you wake up on Sunday morning, want to get to church, please get to church. And hopefully this will just help take some questions away at times. So no more RSVPing. We did that for reasons for safety protocol and to help everything going on these last few months. And we don't think it's no longer needed. We will continue to be at the pavilion area until at least September 6th is our plan at 9:30. So from here, what is that, Galen? 3 or 4 more Sundays here. We will be at 9:30 at the pavilion area. We do not anticipate changing that. So we'll be outdoors at least through September 6th. Yes to masking and social distancing. We definitely are honoring the 6 foot outside and masking outside, except for the worship leaders that are staying 15 feet away from everybody. But anybody closer than that is asked to mask and social distance. If you're in your car, there's no need to mask if you're in your car. And the ushers, another thing that's come up is you should know that the ushers will help you if you need help getting out of the car, where to sit, helping with your lawn chair. I just spoke. We do have ushers at each service. They can help you. You don't have to worry about trying to negotiate the gravel or a little edging of the parking lot or anything like that. We'll take care of you. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that. I think that finishes the announcements. I do want to continue to talk a little bit, though, about the church and what we're doing. Where we've been is the first thing I wanted to talk about. We have now had 22 services since the middle of March. We had 15 that were just virtual, 4 services that were in the sanctuary, and 3 services that have been outside. So that's where we've been. We're pretty much coming up on a half a year of having disrupted from normalcy, would be a good way to put it. We're currently looking into the fall. This would include September 13th and beyond. We're getting some good plans together, some good thoughts together, and I believe in the next week or so, we'll begin to communicate what we're thinking. We, of course, at all times, take so much into consideration what virus numbers are doing in our area, what the governor is requiring, what we think is safe, what we think we can do, the safety and all the precautions we've put in it, and adaptations. I always have trouble with that word, I'm sorry. But we are constantly adjusting and resetting. But anyway, we're beginning to look past September 13th. Clearly, I think most of us would agree that this virus is not going away in the next few weeks. So we're starting to think pretty deep into the fall and actually a little beyond that. Last week, some of you have asked me about numbers. Last week we had, I couldn't count exactly. I get over 40 and I need more fingers, I guess. Last week we had 55 to 60 people attend. We were somewhere in that range. When we have been outside these last 3 weeks, we've been about 25 to 45% of our normal attendance. When we were inside, we were about 20 to 25% of our normal attendance. When you add in virtual, according to my math and my numbers, we're about 90 to 95% of our regular attendance if you include virtual. Some other points that I would like to make on where we are. I think we are providing a safe environment to worship in. I think we provided that when we were indoors, and I definitely think we're providing that when we're outdoors. I'm confident both ways in making that statement. We've had no issues at all. I believe we have been compliant to all the safety precautions that we have communicated to you: masking, social distancing, hand sanitizing. If we've unmasked a speaker here, as Galen has been unmasked, he stayed 15 feet away. We have really been compliant to everything, and we intend to stay that way. I strongly believe we're safe, and actually the results support that. We've been at this for months now, and I think the results are starting to prove that. Well, not starting to, I think that's always proven that, but I think we provide a safe environment and a welcoming environment also. This is a really challenging time. I think I use the word isolated the most. I really feel for people that are homebound or extremely young children or people that need to be especially careful. And we're all somewhat isolated. We can't be with our family and friends as much as we would like. And certainly when we are, there's obstacles, there's challenges, there's unknowns. And as you know, as well as I do, we have to continually adapt at this time. But just as I say that, and I strongly feel that isolation and the hurt and the longing for a return to normalcy, I'll also put the big but in here. We can do this. We can adapt. So many of us are learning more and more that we can do to adapt, to make it work as best we can, but to adapt and to change. And I think you are doing this in your personal lives, and we're doing this here too. We're probably going to need to do this into 2021, but we can adapt. I think of this church and the history of the church, the history of the congregation. And if I'm not mistaken, if I've done all my math right, this church was founded 30 years before the Revolutionary War. This church was here during the Revolutionary War. And if you think of trying to operate the church in that time, who knows what actually happened. I think that the Civil War had to be a challenge in how this church was operated, and whomever ran that, the pastors, the leadership of the church, negotiated through that time when major battles were just not many miles away from here. And I think of the 1918 pandemic and the challenges that had to be there, had to be present during that time period as well. My point is, this is a challenging time. People are going to look back on what we did. And I think I feel blessed to be here and to be a part of this. I said to a few people a week ago when we were leaving a meeting in the pavilion, I said, we do feel blessed. We had this property with a church on it. We had this property. We have a pastor. And I made the comment, I'm really not too concerned as long as we have those two things. And I mean that we have this church, the property to worship in. I think there's two great outdoor places to worship, if not another one. And eventually we will have the sanctuary, and it's always going to be safe. We have to make it that way. My point is, we have a place, we have our people, we have our pastor. We can adapt, and we do have what we need, and taking care of each other is a big part of that. So I'm not trying to downplay the isolation, the challenges, the obstacles every day, but oh my gosh, to focus on what is good, and we have so much. So I wanted to convey that, and thank you. There's one other topic I have this evening, and like I think the last time that I spoke, I asked to speak as a congregational member, not as a representative of I'm not trying to represent consistory or this church with my own thoughts that I'm going to convey to you now. So again, this is Steve talking, and of course I'm a member of the church, but I'm not representing a consistory thought or even the church's mindset here. But just prior to this, to me getting here, I had the opportunity to celebrate with our daughter and granddaughter who just turned 5 years old. So Jan and I could not be in Florida to be with Aria and Lara. So we had a special birthday at 6 o'clock, and I literally came running in here about 29 after, I think, for Galen. We were texting. I got like, Galen, I'm afraid I'm going to hold you out. But I made it, and I wanted to talk about something. So Arya turned 5 years old, and the day Arya was born was the day of my mother's funeral. And we literally had my mother's funeral in Pennsylvania, and our daughter was in labor. And Jan and I left right before the funeral luncheon and jumped in the car and drove 900 miles straight to a hospital. Got there really early in the morning. I got to see our family. And it was one of the best days of my life in every way, in our lives every way, in our family's life every way. But what I would like to talk to you about in setting the background of that story is I want to talk about my mom. And a couple of you may have heard this story, but I think it's an important story. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and she grew up in a white family, a white community with some extra privilege. And she married my father, which gave added privilege. I was the oldest of 3 children. I kind of remember when I was very young, my mom, she didn't say this in a negative way. She goes, but something's not right. We can do more. And at the time of my mother feeling like she needed to do more in her life, she's already teaching school with 3 children. I'm just 7. I believe my mother was 27 at the time. What she did, she ended up on the very in its infancy, the Planning Commission for Head Start with the Kennedy administration. And I don't know how exactly she ended up on that, but my mom was going to Washington in, I think, like 1963, to begin a Head Start program. My mother's feelings were every person deserves the same opportunities in life. And her occupation, as she was an elementary school teacher, is that's where she needed to focus. So my mom sacrificed a lot. Our family did. My father did as well. But my mother would spend a lot of time in a young family's life going to Washington to begin this program, and actually in Philadelphia, as she helped roll this out in Pennsylvania. And Head Start goes on today. And my mom could recognize what white privilege was. She could recognize it without it being thrust in her face every day on TV, like we have the opportunity to see. She was surrounded by white people and some people with power. And she rebelled on her own because she felt like something wasn't right. My mom never let injustice just slide by in her entire life. And the reason I share that story, let me even go further and be more, what's the word, vulnerable here, or a couple of you say, Steve, you inspire me by that you can go there. So let me go there even further. My mother, like, we gave to the church, but what we would give to one place as far as donation, my mom made sure it went to a minority or a Black area or a Black college or some way to get way beyond herself. But it wasn't nearly about money as much as it was about her time, her leadership, and her inspiration to others to help people that we didn't even know, and some that we did know. It certainly is a story that inspires me, and stories like that in your lives inspire me as well. When we as a church help other people that we don't know or may never see again in our lives, and we do that as a church, that is so inspiring when we get outside ourselves to try to address injustice that is real. And I think that this time period, it's important that we don't let it slide under the rug on us, that this is an important time. to take, not to try, to make change. And I think that all of us need to get, when we look around where we work, look around our church, look around our educational systems, look around our families, our friends, can we get out? Do we get outside of ourselves? And sometimes I don't. And I just wanted to share this story. And there's a quote that I have that, and I say this to myself a lot, but ignorance combined with power is the biggest threat to justice. And if I could just say that again, if I'm going to be ignorant, and I'll throw the word blind in there, if I'm going to be ignorant and I have power, that's the biggest threat to injustice, to justice, excuse me. And I think that's a fair statement to make, that those of us, those of you, all of us, our church, everybody in this community, we have the opportunity, the power, if we're willing to not be blind, to change things. So I wanted to share that story. It certainly, my mom was great, granddaughter's great, our church is great, and I think everybody here, we have so much potential and opportunity in our church and in this community to keep making God's world a better place. So I think on that note, am I supposed to look for comments here, Galen?
Yeah.
Tanya, amen, Steve. Thank you for the positive words. Well, I don't think there's anything else I have to say. We talked about where our church has been, is going, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. It's getting later here, Gail. I was up early. And I wanted to share that story about my mom and a lot of us, a lot of you who do so much in this world. So thank you and good night. Have a good evening. So where do I go? End stream?
Yes, use the mouse on the right.
Yes, sir.
And the end screen.
Okay.
And then
End it.